John Peel, very warm welcome to the programme. 32 years on BBC's Radio 1. Do you think you've made and broken stars along the way?
Well, I don't know, not really. I mean, there have been people who've benefited from being featured on the programmes that I do, but...
And people who've benefited from not being...
Exactly so, yes. I certainly that's the case. I mean, I've not made lists of them, but there have been people in the past who've been dismissed by other radio programmes with this, oh, that's a John Peel band or whatever, so we won't bother with them. And the list of people whose services I've turned down is probably more impressive than the list of people that we've actually had on the programme.
Dire Straits, Bruce Springsteen,
exactly, U2. Yes, you've done your homework. Yeah, these are all people. I mean, Bruce Springsteen wasn't offered to me as an artiste, but his debut LP was offered to me as an exclusive by the record label in the States, and I listened to it, and it... I didn't care for it.
You enjoyed playing records that people disliked as much as playing records that they did like.
No, I mean, I don't set out to be contrary, but I like the idea of extremes, I suppose, in a way. So, but you have to bear in mind that by comparison with, if you listen to like an avant-garde music program, as it would be billed, no doubt, in Germany or somewhere like that, then. My programmes sound enormously mild and conservative by comparison with those, but within the context of the BBC, I used to feel as, in the early days of Radio 1 anyway, I used to feel as though I was being billed as the kind of Bader-Meinhof gang of broadcasting, so there was the temptation, I suppose, would have been there sometimes to play excessive music just for the sake of its excess, but
it was nice to get letters saying "Stop playing this rubbish," wasn't it?
Well,
put it back on the turntable again.
I used to get a fair amount of hostile mail, but it's a long time since I did, really. And the World Service programmes that used to trigger off an angrier response, I think, than any others. It was myself and Tommy Vance who did a programme called Rock Salad. Used to generate an amazing amount of hate mail, and, but I mean it was all so intemperate.
At least they were listening.
At least, well, that's true. Yes, they were. Yeah.
People dismissed Jimi Hendrix and Cream, didn't they, as absolute rubbish?
Well, they. I mean, a lot of the people, whose cause I espoused back in the late '60s and early '70s are now staples on Radio 2. So it's so I suppose.
So they've been up and down.
Yes, I mean each generation requires a new excess, I suppose, because I mean obviously part of the function of the music is to on one level is to alienate your parents, which has made it difficult for my children because they've not really been able to find anything that I didn't like. I mean, if they'd come in...
That's the extraordinary thing, is because you can't put your tastes into any category.
No, well, I'm quite grateful for that. I mean, the only thing I have real difficulty with is grand opera, and I think that's because my brother Francis was heavily into opera, and when we went out record shopping, we'd come back and compare notes, and I'd have got a single by Eddie Cochran, total time A and B side 5 minutes. He'd have got a sort of 6 LP boxed set or something in Italian, and we'd spend the rest of the day listening to his records, so I think that kind of hardened my heart against opera, but it's the only thing I think that I have difficulty with.
When you started playing punk, you lost a lot of listeners, didn't you, on the radio?
Yes, but
or at least you cut their age, didn't you? By about 10 years.
Yes, which was quite good. I found that quite exciting because they turned out to be really, I suppose, these are insane generalisations, clearly, but they turned out to be people who wanted me to go on playing their own record collection for the rest of my life and their life, and there didn't seem to me to be much fun to be had from doing that. And the mid-1970s, when you look back on them now, it was an immensely boring time for music, so punk did come along, and it had the same excitement as rock and roll had done when I first heard Little Richard and Elvis Presley and things, that feeling that you're participating in something not entirely wholesome, And funnily enough, I was thinking about this, I was listening to Paul McCartney's LP, he just made an LP of sort of rock classics, and I mean, they're very well played, it's very well done, but it doesn't quite work because he just sounds too decent a bloke, whereas people like Gene Vincent and Elvis and so on just sounded like feral.
You've never got into the rock crowd, have you? You've always kept it at arm's length, you've done it as a job, but you've never sort of got into the scene, you've no celebrity friends, have you?
Not really, no. But
no weekends with Oasis or anything?
Hardly a one, no. But the thing is that... I mean, I was a fan from a very early age. I mean, I was buying records from a very early age. Never imagined at the time that no such job as the job that I now have existed. So I never thought about it. I wanted to do what I now do, but I couldn't have defined it at all when I was sort of 8, 9, 10, 11.
But you haven't really accepted
never,
the position that it's given you.
Not really, but that's not what I want. I mean, I like doing what I do. I mean, I have a program.
And then to leave it behind.
Yeah, I have a program tonight on Radio 1, and I do genuinely still enjoy doing them enormously. I mean, however terrible a day I've had, and by most people's standards, they're not terrible at all. But however fed up I am when I actually start on the program. There's that kind of... I was compared with surfing, and I speak with the great authority of a man who's never surfed. But, I feel once you're kind of up and the wave is carrying you forward, it's immensely exciting. And sometimes you kind of fall off, to carry the analogy on a bit. Then other times you reach the beach. And it's... I still like the fact that at my age, I can still feel like
60.
that. But I don't want to hang out, People obviously like bands that want to hang out with me, because I'm the same age as their dad's older brother, So I like the fact that I live a very simple rural life, but do exactly the job that I would have defined for myself if I'd been able to when I was 10 or 12 years old.
How did a boy who, by his own admission, was pretty shy, get to spend 32 years, or more than 32 years, in front of a microphone?
Well, because it's the perfect job for somebody who's shy, really, because my problem as a kid was, and of course everybody goes on about how shy they are, and they're the most brazen and people tell you
they're all
terrible. Well, they may be on some level, and they always say, well, I do this to mask my shyness. But, I was barely functional as an adolescent, and but doing radio programs is the perfect thing, because you're talking to however many people you're talking to, but you don't have to look them in the eye, and that's the great beauty of it. So it kind of remains entirely personal, and yet it's out there for people, and so it seems a natural thing for somebody. I mean, I've never felt uncomfortable talking into a microphone, even from the very first programs that I did.
School was appalling, wasn't it? Weren't you beaten 30 times?
I was. Well, I did. Yes, I
was to ask why 30 times.
Well, I claim that I set some kind of record in my first term at school, my first term at my public school, and it was always. I'd love to pretend that I was like a really difficult, troublesome, character as portrayed by James Dean in the film of the same name.
But you were just a bit forgetful.
But just dumb, really, and living in a kind of trance, essentially. And it's a bit like the army. There was such a vast number of tiny rules and regulations and privileges and things that you couldn't really. I mean, you would violate some rule, some ordinance, or other, like every 10 minutes of your life. So people, if they wanted to get you, could get you. And by and large, they did. So I did get beaten an awful lot. Yeah.
But you had a housemaster who saved you.
Fantastic man. Yes, absolutely amazing man. R.H.J. Brooke, his name was, and he latterly became the Reverend R.H.J. Brooke. And I didn't realise the extent to which he'd gone to bat on my behalf until, 15 years ago or something. My mother was still alive, and she produced my school reports. And they were just, unbelievable. If any of our children got reports like that, I should be desolate, And I wish I could quote.
What kind of thing?
Well, the only thing I can remember was they were always beautifully written, as they would be in that school and in that time. But one of them just started off with, "This is a thoroughly beastly boy," and then carried on to amplify that theme for quite a long time. But Brooke always defended me, and he would write pages and pages of stuff in which he managed to find some hint of a redeeming feature somewhere beneath. But it was never wickedness. It was always stupidity. And of course, it is one of those things. You look back on it now, and I try to think, why was it that I did so poorly at school? Because I'm not stupid, and I think it was because you lived a life where everything was predestined in a way which, like people, in their teens now, my own children, can't really begin to imagine. That you were never called upon to make any decision about your life at all. You went to kindergarten, to boarding school, to prep school, then to public school, and then
barely even questioned.
Nobody did. So people who have seen people like the people who started Private Eye, they were at school with me, and Richard Ingram, Willie Rushton, Paul Foote, but they were all people who would never have dreamt of questioning the status quo for even a second.
You talked about a lot of hang-ups from school.
Well,
Were there a lot?
I don't think you can go through a system like that without there being. But the one thing which, the one way that you could exercise an option, I've only just realised this in the last couple of years, was by failure. You know, because if you didn't take your A-levels, then the next step was denied to you. You couldn't go to university. And so, and at that time, university meant Oxford or Cambridge, and people who failed to get into Oxford or Cambridge did do things like go and join the Kenya Rifles for 5 years because they'd let the side down, you know, and were a disgrace to their families. So the only way you could exercise that option, as I say, was by not passing your exam.